So, since we last spoke, the peace talks between the US and Iran have failed, and now there are worries that we could be heading for all-out war again. The US has now sent its navy to join Iran in blocking the Strait of Hormuz. Yes? Apparently that does make sense. Hungary has had one of the most pivotal elections in their history, and it may have global consequences. Trump has done something very rare and backtracked and delete his post allegedly depicting him as Jesus. And Australia have just made history after appointing a woman as the head of their army for the first time ever. We have got all of that and so much more. Do not forget to subscribe because we are bringing back these sacrificial lambs to remind you to subscribe. So, let's stop the yapping and let's go to BLOCKADE! BLOCKADE! The whip is too fierce. Sorry, Alex, I don't know if I can do too much about that. Now, if there looks like there's any ripples in the desert, you're imagining things. We are in the desert, all right? No ripples. The Matrix is not real. Okay, I guess, as always, gotta start with updates from the war. But this time, we are about 5 days into the ceasefire. But progress on a permanent solution and end to this war, it's not looking great. In fact, it looks like we're almost going backwards at this point. So as we spoke about on Saturday's episode, JD Vance, he flew to Pakistan and he held negotiations with Iran. But he gave us some pretty bad news the next day. He said that after 21 hours of going at the peace negotiations, they have failed. So they're heading back to the United States without a peace deal.
We have been at it now for 21 hours and we've had a number of substantive discussions with the Iranians. That's the good news. The bad news is that we have not reached an agreement. And I think that's bad news for Iran much more than it's bad news for the United States of America.
He said that the US made it clear what their non-negotiables are, but Iran refused to accept those terms. Trump shared his thoughts regarding the outcome of that meeting on Sunday, and he said that he doesn't care if Iran returns for negotiations.
Oh, I don't know. I don't care if they come back or not. If they don't come back, I'm fine.
He claims that the reason that these talks failed was because Iran were, quote, unwilling to give up its nuclear ambitions.
Iran will not have a nuclear weapon. We'll not have. There is no way that they're going to get, they still want it. And they made that clear the other night. Iran will not have a nuclear weapon.
But on the flip side, Iran have come out with a very different version of why these peace talks failed. Their foreign minister said that the US and Iran were just, quote, inches away from securing a deal, but then the US threatened them with, quote, maximalizing, shifting goalposts and a blockade, and that Iran will not submit to any threat. So it's kind of as we expect. Both sides, they're blaming each other, but the most interesting one was from the person in the middle, the chief negotiator from Pakistan. His version of what went wrong was that the US failed to gain the trust of Iran. He said that the whole room had this air of suspicion and distrust, and that's why it failed. So, as of today, recording, it doesn't look like we're back to square one. It looks like we're minus square one, unfortunately, because only hours after it was announced that the peace talks had failed, Trump has said that they will now be blocking, the US will now be blocking the Strait of Hormuz, which is, I don't know what is going to happen every single time I step in this desert and report the news, because it is just the last thing that anyone was expecting. The US has been working so hard, at least Trump has been saying that they've been working so hard to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, and now they're the ones blocking it. So you're probably wondering, what is the objective here, along with all of us? Well, it seems from initial impressions, at least, that there's two main objectives. The first is essentially, well, if Iran are going to block the Strait of Hormuz, well, then no one is going to get through, and we're going to make sure of that. Because, for those who don't know, Iran and a few other ships have been able to pass, like Pakistani ships, some Indian ships, some French ships carrying fertilizer, so some were passing. But now the US said, well, come on, if we're all going to hurt, then we're all going to hurt together. And the second reason was all of these talks of Iran charging certain ships like a couple of million to be allowed to pass. Now, obviously, the United States doesn't want Iran to profit from letting any ships pass, so they said no one who pays an illegal toll to Iran will have safe passage on the high seas. And then he said, Trump, this is, any Iranian who fires on us or any peaceful vessel will be blown to hell. Now, actually, I watched a video from the BBC that did a very good explanation on, making this blockade from the US make a bit more sense. So essentially in the Strait of Hormuz, there will be two types of blockades. One from Iran, which we know plenty about, but the second from the United States is going to look a little bit different than the Iran's. So instead of sending their ships close to Iran's ports as this makeshift barrier, because of course that runs the risks of drones just flying out, hitting them, these unmanned boats just, they'll get casualties. Instead, they will likely use satellite surveillance to monitor the movement of cargo ships in the region. And then if they see any of these ships try to head, out or in the Strait of Hormuz to head to Iran's coast, they will intervene. Now, the BBC points out that Iran have warned that they will strike Gulf ports if the US decide to do this. But the biggest thing is that guess who one of the biggest customers of Iranian oil is? China. And if China decide, like they have in the past, to escort ships to get their oil, then we have a problem. Does the US get involved? If China is now involved, then we've got a real different situation on our hands. So this blockade that the US say that they are about to do is going to be pretty complicated, and it's got to have a lot of different moving parts. And it again elevates the risk. And as of recording, that blockade should be starting within a matter of hours. Iran, however, are mocking this US Navy blockade. The Iranian parliamentary speaker who led the negotiations in Pakistan posted on X, "Enjoy the current pump figures. With the so-called blockade, soon you'll be nostalgic for $4 or $5 gas." I don't know what the US gas is right now. What are you guys paying at the pump? Diesel, for us over here in the UK, for where I live, it just hit £2, which that's high. So yeah, the United States will be blocking the Strait of Hormuz. The only upside for them, at least, is that there has been a surge of customers, Asian in particular, like Japan, South Korea, that have now gone to the United States to buy gas and oil, because they are the biggest producers in the world. Trump has already said with them blocking the Strait of Hormuz, other ships, they're sailing in and they're getting filled up with gas and all of that. But it is a side note, even if there are more customers for United States oil and gas, it does not even nearly touch or make a big contribution to the amount that's being cut off from the Strait of Hormuz. But yeah, I'll keep you guys updated on this wild situation. But for now, moving on. Okay, now this next story is pretty seismic. Everyone needs to know what the hell just happened in Hungary. So what you are seeing are the streets last night across the country, because for the first time in over 16 years, Hungary has a new leader. And if you put that into perspective, that's like if a US president served 4 successive terms. That would be huge. And the reason this is now making global headlines is because it actually may have global consequences. You see, just 2 days before their election was about to take place, Trump urged Hungarians to get out there and vote for Orbán. That is the prime minister who was in power for over 16 years. In fact, the United States saw this as such a critical election for them that J.D. Vance even flew out there to rally support for Viktor Orbán. Trump described him as a true friend, fighter, and winner, and has his complete and total endorsement for re-election. The other really important point for the entire world, really, is that Hungary also shares a border with Ukraine. And Orbán, unlike all of the other EU leaders, well, he's continued to meet Putin even after the invasion. In fact, with Hungary being a member of the European Union, he has blocked or delayed aid to Ukraine, citing similar reasons to Trump. Hungary first. The opposition, however, Peter Magyar, campaigned on strengthening ties with the likes of the other EU countries, Ukraine, rather than the United States and Russia. And so the battle was set. And then the election day came, and it came with the largest turnout in the country's post-communist history at nearly 80%. That's pretty damn staggering. And after the votes were counted, the opposition, Peter Magyar, he won. in a landslide, actually. In fact, he actually won to the point where you can expect over the next few years Hungary to look very different, because the new government has won 2/3 of the seats in parliament. That means they haven't just won, but they've won enough to the point where they can make sweeping changes in the country with much less resistance. Now, obviously, there are two camps in this. One side, obviously the more conservative leaning, are saying that this is a loss. Like Elon Musk, for example, he tweeted saying Soros's organization has now taken over Hungary. Now, if you don't know who Soros is, that's too much of a deep cut to get into right now. And then those more on the liberal side, Barack Obama, for example, he tweeted saying that it was a victory not just for democracy, not just in Europe, but around the world. But the question is, what do you guys think? Do you think this is a good decision that was made by the people of Hungary or not? And if you are from Hungary, make sure to put it in the comments saying that you're happy or sad about this result. Let me know your thoughts. Moving on. Also, since we last spoke, something that you probably wouldn't have been expecting, but the Trump administration has now subpoenaed Reddit to testify before a grand jury. What have you done now, Reddit? So Reddit is now joining a pretty long list of social media companies in hot water right now, but theirs is a little bit different than the rest. So according to The Intercept, who claim that they have obtained and viewed the subpoena, they say that the Department of Homeland Security are trying to identify an anonymous user who allegedly doxed the ICE agent who killed Renee Good in Minnesota back in January. They are claiming that this anonymous user posted personal information of this ICE agent on a Reddit thread, and the US government are saying, well, we wanna lay charges. This information allegedly includes where the agent grew up, his military background, and other biographical information. And according to the obtained subpoena, Reddit have until April the 14th, which is today, to disclose the user's personal data in front of the grand jury. So that's essentially it in a nutshell. The US government want this individual's information so they can charge him, potentially. However, the lawyers of this anonymous user are arguing that their privacy is protected under the First Amendment. And Reddit have said in a statement to The Intercept that privacy is central to how Reddit operates. We do not voluntarily share information with any government, especially not on users exercising their rights to criticize the government or plan a protest. The question is, what do you guys think? Should this user be facing legal repercussions, or were they just exercising their free speech? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, but for now, moving on. Also, since we last spoke, Nigeria made a deadly mistake. Over 100 innocent civilians have been killed after the Nigerian Air Force accidentally struck the wrong target. So over the weekend, Nigerian officials attempted to carry out an airstrike on a jihadist rebel group in the region. They say that this was close to a market that they believe that these terrorists frequently visited for food supplies. And despite claiming that they were successful in eliminating scores of these rebels, who, as a side note, were believed to be planning an attack on a nearby community, the local government have admitted today that civilians who were in that market at that time may have also been harmed in a, quote, misfire. Amnesty International have spoken with survivors and nearby hospitals, and their director said that, quote, we have pictures and they include children. But to make this horrific situation even worse, it's not even that unheard of. In fact, the AP are reporting that over 500 civilians have died since 2017 in similar attempts from the army to fight these rebel groups. Security analysts believe that this is a result of poor intelligence gathering and miscommunication. Damn, that is wild. Let me know your thoughts. Moving on. Also, since we last spoke, the Pope has just said something pretty strange. He said that he is not scared of Trump, which is really not something you'd expect a pope to be saying about a president. But of course, if you watched the last episode, you might understand the lore to this. But since then, the beef between the Vatican and the United States government has just gone from, it was sitting at about a 50, now it's 100. It's intense. Because over the weekend, Trump posted this. Yes, another essay that if we read the whole thing, we'd all be as old as... Sorry, we need to stop making that joke. This is not even a joking matter, all right? In this long post on Truth Social, Trump said that Pope Leo is weak on crime and terrible for foreign policy. He said that he likes the Pope's brother, Louis, much better because Louis is all about MAGA, he gets it, and Leo doesn't. And also that he doesn't want a Pope who criticizes the president of the US because he's doing exactly what he was elected in a landslide to do. And then later, when he was asked by reporters why he attacked Pope Leo online, he doubled down and he said,
I don't think he's doing a very good job. He likes crime, I guess. We don't like a pope that's going to say that it's okay to have a nuclear weapon. We don't want a pope that says crime is okay in our city. I don't like it. I'm not a big fan of Pope Leo.
But it doesn't end there. It never ends there. There's always more. A couple of hours after his original post, Trump randomly posted this image with no caption or explanation of what looks like Trump being depicted as a holy figure. Dare I? Some people have been saying it's Jesus Christ because of the robe, the red, the white. I don't know. But clearly he is a holy figure while he was, tweeting about Pope. So, I don't know. And he seems to be healing what I was going to say looks like Hunter Biden, because he kind of does, but I don't think that's Hunter Biden. And for those who watched the last episode, you'll know that this is following that meeting that was allegedly very heated where the US called in a representative for the Pope and scolded them. So it's just keeps on climbing, doesn't it? But here's the thing. This might have actually been a pretty big mistake from Trump. Because while, yes, you could argue that Trump has made many controversial posts before, and with time everyone, gets angry, but then we move on and forget about it. This time, it might be a bit different because Trump has done something very rare, which he doesn't usually do. He actually deleted that controversial post, and he's kind of backtracked now.
Did you post that picture of yourself depicted as Jesus Christ?
Well, it wasn't depicted. It was me. I did post it, and I thought it was me as a doctor, and it had to do with Red Cross as a Red Cross worker there, which we support. It's supposed to be me as a doctor making people better, and I do make people better. I make people a lot better.
Yeah, so doctor from Red Cross. That's the story. Of course, people immediately took to Twitter and they started responding, saying things like, the Red Cross is famously known for its robes and magic. And others just started posting pictures of AI-generated fancy dress costume packets with the Jesus robe, of course, but instead it's labeled Red Cross worker. But perhaps partly the reason why we are seeing this very rare U-turn from Trump is not just because it sparked backlash from his critics. He's used to that. But rather, it sparked a lot of backlash from his own supporters. Because remember, when he got elected, Trump won a huge portion of the votes from Catholic Christians. But now, not only is he beefing with the leader of the Catholic Church, 1.5 billion, but also many Catholic Christians are describing the picture that Trump posted as blasphemy. I mean, this alone showed quite a lot of the responses from his fan base. Things like, you are mocking Jesus, you are sick, I never regretted a vote more. I voted for this, MAGA is dead. I deeply regret voting for you. I mean, it just goes on and on. Obviously, someone has put together a whole compilation of tweets. Whether they're real, whether they're not, there's a lot of bot farms out there. So, it's one thing angering the people that were never going to vote for you anyway, but it's another thing when you're angering the people that would or have voted for you, especially coming up to the midterms. But here's the thing, the Pope has responded to this, and he is not backing down. In fact, he said that he's not scared of Trump.
I have no fear of the Trump administration.
He told reporters on a flight, towards, he's doing an Africa tour at the minute. He's visiting multiple countries over the next 11 days in Africa. First stop, Algeria, for anyone that wants to know. But he said that he has no fear of the Trump administration or speaking out loud the message of the gospel. He said, and I think that someone has to stand up and say, there's a better way to do this. So yeah, if Trump and the Pope beefing wasn't on your 2026 bingo card, that makes you very rational, reasonable, and normal, because no one could have expected this. Such a strange year. Anyway, let me know what your guys' thoughts are on this story in the comments. Looking forward to reading them, but for now, moving on. Also, we've got a pretty crazy update from the guy who broke into that California house dressed as the fictional character Harry Dresden. Now, I'm sure you've seen the insane video by now, so I'm not going to re-go through all of it, but we've just got an update from police who shared a bit more information about how these events transpired. So this guy that was standing outside this house, who was now being identified as Jason Nichols, he pulled up to this random person's house. He started ringing the doorbell and screaming to let him in. Obviously, the guy, the husband, who we're now finding a bit more information about, was like, "Who are you? Why are you trying to get in?"
My name is Harry Dresden, Open the door. This is my neighborhood. Open the door. Now, or I will end you. Do you understand me?
But turns out the husband at the time was not at the house. His wife and child were. So as the husband is speaking with this guy, he is quickly in the background racing home. Now, according to police, this Jason Nichols guy, when he couldn't break in through the front door, he successfully broke in through the back sliding glass door. And you can see him inside opening doors and looking for whoever he thought was inside the house, which you can just imagine as the husband watching this on your phone and you knowing that your wife and child is in there. Now, very fortunately, as this guy entered the home, the husband returned home with a shovel and confronted him. A physical altercation ensued, during which both the husband and this Nichols guy sustained head injuries.
Where's she? I can hear her. I can you son of a I'm giving you chest. Get the out of my house. In the third room, bro. I'm telling you, get the out of my house.
The wife and child were reportedly unharmed. So, huge W, firstly, to the husband. Well done to you. But secondly, how important to have that camera doorbell. I mean, this would be a perfect integration for an ad of camera doorbells, but imagine you didn't have that. Like, you know, to record the whole thing. Now, this Jason Nichols guy has been arrested. Crazy. Moving on. Also, since we last spoke, Australia have just made history. Yet again, because for the first time ever, they've appointed a woman to lead the Australian Army. So after serving in the military for over 30 years, 55-year-old Lieutenant General Susan Coyle was announced this week as the country's new Chief of Army beginning July. Now, she is extensively experienced. She's held various leadership positions in the military throughout her career. The Defense Minister, Richard Marles, said that she is a standout candidate and that this is a deeply historic moment. And what also makes her appointment so significant is that there are very, very few countries in the entire world where a woman is the head of the army. So this is very, very unique and, as he said, historic. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, but for now, moving on. And lastly, it is April the 14th, and today, throughout history, kind of a little bit of a cursed one, not gonna lie. Firstly, today in 1865 was the day that President Abraham Lincoln was assassinated. He was shot in the head at Ford's Theater in Washington, D.C. That was just 5 days after the Civil War ended. That also made him the first ever U.S. president to be assassinated. Also, today in 1935 was the day that became known as Black Sunday. That is because a huge storm carrying millions of tons of dust and dirt in the air, referencing the black because you couldn't even see, it pulled all of this dirt and dust throughout parts of Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas, Colorado, New Mexico. I believe that whole area is known as like the Dust Bowl for fair reason. And this single storm killed huge amounts of crops, livestock. It became one of the worst disasters that forced thousands of families out of the region, and it permanently changed farming in the United States. And then lastly, today was the day that the Titanic actually sank. Yes, last video we spoke about the Titanic. That was when it set sail. Today it actually sank. So April 14th. Not a great day. And then lastly, just a little bit of housekeeping. I've seen in the comments that there are petitions to actually start petitions again. The petitions never left. The petitions are only debated and brought to Parliament of the Supreme Leader when they get over 1,000 likes. So you are not getting enough support for your petitions. The Supreme Leader does not remove or take anything away. remember what's at stake. Subscribe to the channel, have a fantastic middle of the week, and I will see you on Thursday. Yeah, I thought it was the weekend. Damn. All right, stop the yapping and let's go.